Gormon Falls is the tallest waterfall in Texas, and while I would normally just look up some pictures to see what it looked like before deciding to do the hike, especially since it was also for Clara's birthday, I ended up thinking, meh, let's just leave it as a surprise. Before we even made it into the park, we saw these cows hanging out on the side of the road. They all seemed pretty young and were super cute to see, even if they had some poop smeared on their butts. The weather was cloudy, drizzly, and gloomy, which I find super perfect for hikes, both because it isn't as hot and because everything just seems to look better for the camera. The start of the trail was rocky. Cacti, shrubs, and trees with pops of red were abundant. And these little poops were everywhere too. I don't know what's making them, but they seem to be pretty typical for Texas hikes. We kept passing through these neat little patches and sometimes archways of trees. There was this leaf that was spinning out of control. And on the ground, you'd see rocks with interesting colors, patterns, and shapes. Some even had a pinkish hue with sometimes a veiny or circular pattern. Some of the trees were covered in a moss, or at least a plant that looked kind of like kale. And Clara also started to notice these orange, flowery, spore-like things coming from them too. We were imagining the kale to be some kind of plant that was taking over the tree, and these little orange sprouts to be their next stage, kind of like the mushroom spore-like zombies from the show The Last of Us. We then reached a wider open area. There were stones laid about in a pattern that were somewhat reminiscent of how someone might lay stones down for a home garden, and the entire hiking experience began to feel more like a research session on cacti. You got to clearly observe their variations of bushes, their ashy and dusty looking flowers, their almost neon green spikes, and these tiny white flowers that always seemed to be sprouting around them. On the pieces that had fallen, the colors could clearly communicate that they were decomposing, and the already decayed were still able to teach us something, showcasing the marvel and complexity of their internal systems. We took a tiny break about a mile in to eat the sandwiches we packed. The flies here seemed to have an incredible sense of smell and were starting to bug us more and more, particularly around our backpacks, which was where the sandwiches were. After scarfing them down, we continued on the still very rocky path through sometimes very unclear intersections, and finally made it to a space where you could hear the rushing of water, along with a significantly steeper and rockier path. For the first time since coming to Texas, we felt for a moment like we weren't in Texas. There was a constant, gentle breeze emanating from the waterfall. The moss growing on the rocks to the side looked almost like Spartan helmets to me for some reason. And because of the nature of this waterfall, you got to see rocks under it in mid-formation, developing into these lumpy, cone-like umbrella shapes. With the perfect amount of shade from the trees and the leaves overhead, everything here felt mystical. That is super cute. At first, we were thinking to just head back after making it to the falls. But after seeing this super cute armadillo, we took it as a sign to spend a little extra time in the area. We looked to the side and turns out it was an entrance to the Colorado River. We found a few spots where you could see how the waterfall connected to the river, like this bubbling hole in the ground and this little nook off to the side. Lots of tiny translucent fish were swimming around in the shallow water, and we even saw a big one wallowing nearby too. The tall black and orange cliffs across the river hinted at the idea that there were more adventures and sights in the area than we could even begin to imagine. And after having our fill of fun with the drone and the open space, we decided to call it a day and began our hike back to the start. The fact that we both didn't know what the waterfall would be like made for an extremely fun adventure. It wasn't a thunderous and full waterfall like the ones I've seen up north like Niagara or Brandywine, but it was really unique and provoked its own special and magical vibe. More than I'd like, I find myself judging locations from the pictures or videos I see, and I consider it a practice to consciously not overanalyze or dig. It's kind of like that feeling when you watch too many movie trailers for an upcoming film, and you end up feeling like you know everything that's gonna happen. Instead of doing that, I try to keep it light and make the process of discovering if something is amazing or not a part of the journey. Of course, claims like something being the tallest waterfall in Texas is a good hint to go off of, but you get the point. There is beauty in the unknown, and making mystery a part of the process can yield mesmerizing results.